some treble in it. Here it comes. Yes, you are now listening to the sounds of Sports Reports as Ordered. And tonight, we decided to save the best for last. The mighty SEC, aka college football's D block. We're going to get into it tonight. Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, Tennessee, Ole Miss, so on and so forth. And I got with me the even kill. Born in Texas, raised in VA, representing New Jerusalem, talking about Rutgers going to make the playoffs. He is Mr.Logical.
What's goody?
Don't bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
And then, of course, you got me, your unorthodox statistician, down in the Alamo representing Baltimore, Maryland. 2-5. The one left so much you thought I was Southpaw. So we gonna get this thing started with a little something we like to call "Get It Off My Chest." Mr.Logical, the floor is yours.
Oh, the floor is mine. I'm starting this off.
You are. And before he gets started, like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things, do all the good things.
Absolutely. Well, my get off my chest is just kind of simple. Like I said, Mike gets into the stats. I get into like the stuff behind it, not necessarily like all feelings or anything like that. But I like to break down the nonsense, the nonsensical stuff that I hear from people that talk to me. Even some of the times I've said some nonsensical things and somebody threw it back in my face. I'm like, "Are you right? I'm good." My mom called me Mr. Logical my whole life, essentially. So the NFL been pissing in our pockets and telling us raining. You tell me you want to reduce concussions, but you also want to increase kickoff returns. So you have this new kickoff setup, which is it's just ugly. I just don't like it. I'm not a big fan of change. I just don't like it. But the main thing I don't like is I don't like the reason that they're trying to sell me on it. It's the same way when when every time I heard Raheem and Terry Fontenot talk about the Penix pick. Like, listen, you just be like, "Hey, we need insurance. This is insurance. We thought he was the best player." Like, you don't have to spin it like we hope he doesn't play. I don't need all the extra stuff. Just give me the real. Let me run with it. Just tell me the truth. The NFL said that they want to reduce concussions, so they set up this new format. But essentially, every single kickoff, the expectation is that someone runs the ball back. So that means at a minimum, 2 people will be colliding, the ball carrier and whoever tackles them, coupled with the other 10 blockers and the other 10 tacklers. So 22 people are going to be making vicious contact every time because your expectation is you have to run it back. And if you kick it into the end zone, the other team gets at the 30. I have a feeling that most NFL teams is going to be like, you know what? We're giving up too many yards because one missed tackle, you're at the 40. So I think a lot of teams will start kicking into the end zone, and it's going to look even goofier. It's going to look like an even dumber touchback situation they had the year before. But you say you do it to reduce concussions, but meanwhile, you're still in conversations about having an 18th game. And this is after the initial $1 billion lawsuit, you change it to 16 games. And yeah, you have all the rules about the penalties and everything else, but you can't legislate the contact out of it. And I was talking about this at work. And one of my coworkers, you give him credit, this guy named Q, was like, if they just paid for the insurance after the fact, and then allowed the conversation to be like, "Hey, I know I'm playing this game at my own risk. We know you're playing the game at the risk for us to profit. When you are done playing, we will supply you with medical insurance to where you can get your ailments that you accrued from playing football taken care of." Same thing with the military. You can do 2 years, you can do 22 years. If your paperwork is right and your disability rating is a certain number, you can still get your medical care. You just got to pay for it. You got to pay a little copay when you pay. You pay an annual. I pay monthly, like mine's divided up over 12 monthly payments. It's not much, but I have to pay for it now. I'm not active duty. So they understand, hey, send you to these deployments, make you wear these boots, your feet are flat, carrying this, climbing up this ladder, lifting this refrigerator up the ladder so you can put it in a jet. All these things could potentially hurt you. So when we get out, we're gonna make sure you square it away. Just do that. Just be honest and say, hey, take care of you, but as of right now, we need you to produce yards and touchdowns. So all the fantasy football affiliates and all the gambling affiliates cut us our $100 million season check.
Mm-hmm.
So we need touchdowns, we need big plays, and we need the novice who are just getting into football, doesn't really know anything about it, and they do it for fantasy football. We need something that's going to entertain them. I find it very entertaining if a safety cuts off a deep post route for an interception. I think it's a good look. Someone who's playing fantasy football might really need that quarterback or wide receiver to get that touchdown. I think the safety made a great play, but I like football. But if I'm just watching because I got an over under on yards for CD Lamb and someone picks Dak off, I might be pissed. So let me fix that by giving you these kickoff returns.
Right.
So don't piss my pocket and tell me it's raining. Go to 18 games anyway. Give them 2 buys. Pay for their medical insurance. And another thing I add on, I want to give credit to Q for this as well. I told him I was going to bring it up on the show. Instead of having a Super Bowl on Sunday night and everyone has to figure out getting to work, have it Saturday night. There's nothing else on. It's still prime time. Just have it Saturday night. Because he was talking about if it shifts, then the Super Bowl will be the Sunday before President's Day, which is normally like the third Monday. It was like, just have it on Saturday night. I'm like, that's an idea. I don't know, but they get 2 weeks off anyway, so it's not like you're cutting them short. But Saturday night, because it's not like they do much on Saturday night before the Super Bowl anyway. I don't think they have a concert or anything like that. So, but that's an idea. But yeah, just be honest. If you're gonna take the money, take care of the people, let them play the way they're gonna play.
Yeah, so much for player safety too, huh?
It's I don't think it was ever really about player safety, because no matter what, you're still playing a dangerous contact sport. Five guys just piled on
I
top
was
of each
speaking
other.
on it from the 18 game standpoint.
Oh yeah,
And
18 games. I mean, hell, if we as we're going to talk about the SEC and championships, I think the college players are going to be around 16 games.
mm-hmm. And so yeah, player safety's gone out the window. It was never really a thing. It was just cute words that people wanted to say to make it sound like they actually cared.
Yeah.
But speaking of football, we are less than 2 days away from Dublin, Ireland. Florida State Seminoles, Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. You get a conference game right off top. ACC all-time. Florida State leads the series 15-11. Played in the ACC title game against each other twice. Can't say that about Miami because,
They haven't played yet.
And then you got kick sixes. You got last-second field goals. We are here. DJU's first game. He left Clemson, went to Oregon State. Nobody cared about that. Now he's back in the ACC, got a game against Clemson coming up this year. This is what college football is about, right? Rivalry. It's all about opening week and close games. And Florida State and Georgia Tech for Saturday is the only game worth a damn. You got New Mexico, coached by Bronco Mendenhall, as underdogs by double digits to a FCS team. You got SMU traveling to Nevada.
You must love coaching if you're coaching a FBS school that's so bad that they're double-digit underdogs to FCS school.
Yeah, and then, of course, next Thursday, we get things started with Coach Prime in North Dakota State. You got Minnesota hosting North Carolina. College football is here. So I know you NFL fans are waiting for September 5th, Chiefs and Ravens, but we going to take it for now. Let college football reign supreme. That's it. You know what I'm saying? So now, as we're on the subject of college football, it's preview season. So we done gave you the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10. So it's only right that we finish it off with the mighty, mighty SEC. Now, there's a lot of storylines in the SEC this year. Here's a few of them. One, can LSU stop anybody? Number two, what is and what will Tennessee be? With the 12-team playoff, is the SEC playoff dominance over? Is Georgia's schedule just a little bit too much? We know Florida's is. And then, why did the SEC not give us Texas and Bama this year? The last 2 years, that's been some of the best games of the season. Don't got it this year. But Mr. Logical, the question that I want to ask you.
Ooh, I'm ready.
Now that the SEC, just like the rest of these power conferences, don't have any divisions, are there any teams that you think it benefits or hurts by not having divisions anymore?
Anybody that was in the SEC West.
They're happy now.
They're happy because they might have a shot. I know we talked about the Big Ten the other day. I think now maybe the pressure's off a little bit on the top teams. I want to give credit, but I forgot. I believe it was Joel Klatt that said, was it Joel Klatt or maybe Colin Cowherd? It might be some games that you might rest a guy, your starter, who's like tweaked something at practice or from the previous game. You might rest them knowing that, I'll take this talent off the field because even if we lose, the season's so long, so many teams get into the playoffs that we might just be able to overcome it. Give this guy a couple of weeks to come. Instead of coming back week 5, we'll play that tough game without you because we have these opportunities. I think some of the top schools with real depth, they're going to be able to take advantage of that. I'm not sure if every school is going to have the wide receiver depth to where you can rest 2 guys and you got 2, 3, or 4-star guys coming off the bench that are equally as far as size production that can give you those same numbers. So I think the top teams, like, your standard top teams for SEC, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and now Missouri, I think those teams will be fine. Maybe throw in Ole Miss just because I think they have excellent recruiter head coaches, and just like the program tends to just kind of reload, retool every year. Team like South Carolina, Tennessee now kind of on the up and coming, Texas A&M with their flux, they're going to have to be on it. They can't hope that somebody else slips. They're going to have to stay like on top of their game. But I think some of your top teams in the SEC, just like every year, even with the 14 playoff, your top 3 SEC schools were never really out of the running to be in the college football playoff until they got that second loss. Once you got that second loss, it was like, okay, it's kind of hard to go to, like I said, go to the podium and rationalize it. But
yeah, I think now you probably get 2 losses.
You probably get 2 losses. And that's what I said. So the top 5, your top 5 schools, like I said, Georgia, Missouri, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas, I think they're fine. Everybody else is going to have to really be on their P's and Q's.
Yeah, so I think that, if you're a team, like you said, the SEC West, if you're a team like, say, Mississippi State, if you could get yourself together and not have to play Bama every year, not have to play Texas every year, LSU every year, whatever it may be. If you're Florida, you're probably going to play Georgia and Tennessee every year, but, you might miss Kentucky, so on and so forth. But, of course, taking it from the top, and like you brought it up, we got change in the SEC. There's a guy by the name of Nick Saban, who had been in Alabama since 2007. And it's ridiculous, right? He won 6 national titles there. He already had a previous national title at LSU. But what's crazy about it is his overall record at Alabama was 206-29. He lost 7 games his first year there. So from 2008 through last year, he lost 22 games.
202 and 22.
Yeah. So that's just bananas, right? So, but I'm here to tell you, Alabama fans, you're going to lose this season.
And not only that, I imagine that some kind of investigation is going to come out within the next 8 months. Because Pete Carroll did it, Jim Harbaugh did it, Chip Kelly did it. All these guys that kind of abruptly left really, really, really good college jobs to either do nothing or take on really just mediocre NFL jobs. Something came out after they left. Nick Saban's, like I'm saying, I'm just speculating.
Okay.
It just felt like someone who had that kind of legacy. We're talking, you said 206 and 29 in 15 seasons. That's the math of 15, 16 seasons.
Might be 16, but yeah.
16 seasons, six national championships, probably played in or was in the running for up to about 11 or 12. So 70% of the time, you're like literally either winning national or competing for national championship, and you just retire at the end after losing in the college football playoff and it's about to go to 12 teams. So
and not only that, but they were
a lock to go in. Yeah,
they were in overtime with the national champs. So they were a few plays away from playing for another national title.
If the quarterback center exchange was better, they probably win. I think if he gets that snap clean, he doesn't have to panic and run right into the middle of the line. I think he gets an opportunity to make something happen.
But yeah, let me just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. Bama is a 4-loss team this year. And the reason that they're a 4-loss team is because I have to rely on a dude named Jalen Milroe. Now, we look back at this. We talked about this. This is a team that made the playoff. They were in overtime with Michigan. They needed a 4th and 31 to beat one of the worst Auburn teams of my lifetime. An Auburn team that lost at home by 3 touchdowns to New Mexico State the week before.
Yeah.
So when I look at Alabama now, they bring in Kalen DeBoer from Washington, who took Washington to the national title game. 103-12 as a head coach. Alabama will be fine. Years down the road. You got to implement the system. And the one thing about Kalen DeBoer's system, you got to be able to throw the ball. The one thing that Jalen Milroe can't do is make the correct throw.
From the pocket.
Make an accurate throw that doesn't... Now, don't get me wrong now. He will put the ball over your head. But can Jalen Milroe make the 3rd and 8 pass?
Yeah, he's not surgical he doesn't break it down surgically with the ball.
Like think about this now. Like, who did Kalen DeBoer coach last year? Michael Penix.
8th overall pick.
Jalen Milroe is nowhere near close. Ask Bill O'Brien. And as we go forward, right? They got a good running game. Justice Haynes, Jam Miller. They brought Caden Proctor back on the offensive line. He transferred, went back home to Iowa, and then decided,
got paid.
I got to go back.
Got paid.
And then,
that part.
But when I look at the defense, no Dallas Turner, no Kool-Aid McKinstry, no Terry Arnold. Bama's in trouble. And so they got Georgia coming in on September 27th.
They're in trouble by Bama standards.
Well, I'm just saying they're
not Texas A&M trouble.
They are not playing for the SEC championship. They might not finish top 3 in the conference. They're going to lose to Georgia on September 27th. And you want to talk about an upset? I got Missouri going in there and winning.
I think when we break down Missouri, I don't know if I find that to be an upset because they, like I said, they played Georgia very tough last year. We talked about it in our pregame.
They play Georgia tough every time, even when they're a bad team, they still play Georgia well. So looking at Alabama, they go to Camp Randall, to Wisconsin, so that could be troublesome. I'll pick them to win, but it could be troublesome. They got to go to Tennessee. We remember what happened last time they went to Tennessee, and they had Bryce Young then. And they got outgunned. Now, granted, Bryce Young put up 49 points, but they got outgunned by Hendon Hooker. So now I'm bringing Jalen Milroe to play against Nico? Come on now. Something just don't add up right there. So I'm going Tennessee in that game. They go to Death Valley to play LSU. They go to Norman to play Oklahoma the week before they play Auburn. You know they pissed about that. That's usually the week that they play the Citadel. They play Chattanooga.
They play Mercer. They play Mercer the week before Oklahoma.
They play
They
Mercer.
normally play Mercer the week before Auburn. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you gotta go to Norman. So it's not just, hey, there's a SEC game here. You're going to one of the toughest places in the country to play, and then you have to turn back around and get up for your rival. And don't be shocked if Auburn gets them this year. Year 2 of Hugh Freeze. So, I mean, I'm just saying, I can see Bama as bad, relative. I can see Bama as bad as 7-5.
I mean, you make a solid case. For instance, the Wisconsin game can be tough because it's at Wisconsin. They're going to play tough defense. And if Jalen Milroe doesn't show in those first 2 games, because remember, USF, he didn't play against them last year. He was benched or he was injured.
Yeah, and that game was hairy.
I think they won 15-6.
I think it was 20-3, or it ended up being 20-3, but it was like 3-0 at halftime.
Yeah, it was don't forget money game. Yeah,
and don't forget now. Why you say that? Don't forget now, people out there. I know they get UCF or USF at home this year, but let's not forget USF's head coach, Alex Golish. Who is Alex Golish? He's the guy that called the game where they scored 52 on Alabama at Tennessee. So, he knows Bama, or at least, he's not afraid of Bama. He doesn't look at Alabama and say, my team doesn't belong here. He's got a victory. I mean, he wasn't the head coach, but he's got a victory over Alabama. Yeah. And that was year 1 for him last year.
South Florida talent. Wisconsin's going to play smash mouth. The SEC, the one thing about the SEC is that their trench players travel. Like, you could put them anywhere. There's probably one on every single NFL roster. On one side of the ball, you have a guy from the SEC that is a major contributor on your team. Probably every NFL roster, if we checked it, it's probably a dude from the SEC currently on the roster that's being paid at the upper levels of his position. So they're going to be solid there. Just, are you going to be able to, if they QB contain well and they take away Jalen Milroe's opportunity to break the pocket, break contain, and he has to throw from the pocket. Oh, there we go. The kickoff rule is working out. Yeah. So that's my concern, because when it happens, because you talked about, Bill O'Brien told him, because he talked about, people count me out. And I think people love him. I think he's a good kid. I've seen him when he, he saw Nick Saban at some award show and he went into him. I believe people really enjoy him and like him. I like him. I liked his moment when granted it was a 4th and 31, but he was out there screaming, "Give me the Heisman." But in the same sense, it's like, are you ready to take that next step in your passing game to combo that with your running game? Because Jalen Hurts isn't like a prolific pocket passer,
right?
But he makes great throws from the pocket when he needs to.
And the other thing about that is he did finish 6th in the Heisman race, but we keep talking about 4th and 31. The guy that caught that pass, Isaiah Bond, is now a Longhorn. So, Jermaine Burton, he's a Bengal right now. So who's catching the ball for Alabama? So that's a bad combination. I got a quarterback that can't throw besides the deep ball, and I got receivers that are nondescript right now. So you hope that Kalen DeBoer can come in, sprinkle some of that magic and that pixie dust, but his offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, is the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks right now. You got so some positive for Alabama, though. On the defensive side of the ball, they bring in 2 head coaches to be coordinators. So they bring in Kane Womack from South Alabama to be the defensive coordinator. He gave up his head coaching position to do that. They got Maurice Linguist from Buffalo. He was the head coach there. He came to Alabama to be a secondary coach. So most of these teams are trying to reload on players. Bama's reloading on coaches.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to coach talent, then Alabama's a place to be.
Yep.
Because even with Caleb DeBoer, because even when Nick Saban had a few down years where they weren't competing for national champions, they still had top talent. They still were getting guys like AJ McCarron, and it all kind of turned around. You just need that time for it to turn around. Caleb DeBoer, he did his thing in Washington, got Washington to the national championship game.
Yeah.
Michael Penix, Roma Dunze, a lot of top, not first round draft picks. So having that wealth of talent is going to work out. But like you said, you have the quarterback. Can the quarterback make the plays you need? Because in that game against Texas last year, there's some throws he probably should have been able to make, and maybe he'll do better this year.
Right.
But it's going to be a lot of pressure, especially in those first couple of games before you go to Wisconsin. And we talked about those true road games that Alabama doesn't rarely play.
Right.
This is going to be one of them. So, and that's a new environment for them. These guys probably any of these guys probably never played a game in uh, Wisconsin or a big game in the Big Ten on the road. So that's another thing. The home field advantage is huge.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, Kalen DeBoer is a winner. So long term, Bama's gonna be fine. But we talking about this year. You know what I mean? Like, so as it stands, like I said, 103-12 record. At Washington 2 years, he was 25-3. So the man is a winner. It is what it is, but you gotta start from somewhere. And
Correct.
and talking about winners, what about the Georgia Bulldogs? Like, Georgia got a schedule on them. They got a schedule. Like I said before, they open up with Clemson right off the bat in that neutral site game down in Atlanta. They go to Kentucky 2 weeks after that. The week after, or they get a bye, and then they go to Bama. They come off of Bama and host Auburn. They go to Texas 2 weeks after that. Then they get another bye, and then they go into the cocktail party against the Gators. Then they go to Ole Miss after that, host Tennessee after that. So, so if this is like,
if this is year, you're gonna get them. If you're gonna get them in a year, this
Georgia,
is the year.
We trust Georgia because the name Georgia. Like, it makes sense. This is a good team, talented. Kirby Smart might be the best coach in the country right now. He came from the Saban tree and everything. So right now he's poised to be the next Saban guy to go on that run. But now, we got a 12-team playoff. So, we'll see how that goes. But when I look at Georgia, right, Carson Beck, is he going to be the first quarterback drafted in the NFL next year? He came in last year, replaced Stetson Bennett. We had questions because Stetson Bennett was such a gamer, such a winner. Carson Beck came in.
I don't see first overall quarterback when I see Carson Beck.
No, I don't see it either. But people are saying
scouts
that.
are lazy. All they do is they just look at literally scouts.
They see that he played for Georgia.
They watch the college football playoff. They watch the last 4 teams play, or they watch the championship weekend, and then they see who got selected for the 4, and then they just pick players off those teams. Every year, the team with the most players drafted in that draft, one of them they played in the college football playoff. It always is. They're probably always not even the best players available. It's just the fucking scouts don't watch that much. It's too much college football, so they wait till the end. They get the best 6 teams, and then they pull a bunch of players from there. Because it was a couple years where Texas had 3 players drafted in the NFL when they were they had their down year. There's still Texas talent players on that team. They just were coached by Charlie Strong, and then they weren't getting to championship games. And it was 3 players. Miami wasn't getting players drafted. It's because they're not in the final. They're not in that final 6. Well, now it's gonna be 12. That's all the scouts do and that's why people think he's going to be number 1 pick. I don't see number 1 overall pick. Number 1 overall pick in college slices and dices college defenses every week. Every week, Peyton Manning looked like the number 1 overall pick. Caleb Williams, lack of emotion. If he wasn't always so emotional about his wins and losses on the field, he looked like he was sliced on the number 1 pick. Shedeur Sanders, for the most part, looks like he's slicing the dice in college defenses.
Yeah, the NFL in trouble now because Caleb Williams confirmed that he's going to paint his nails every week.
That's not going to change. A lot of people paint their nails.
Well, Georgia, they had a problem last year, but it was masked because they were so great. Their running game was pretty much non-existent. So that was what made it strange, was because we're not used to Georgia and Kirby Smart throwing the ball all around the field. So now they went out and got Trevor Etienne, brother of Travis. He was the Florida Gator last year, and now he switched sides, went from the Bloods to the Crips. And here you are. Now Georgia has a running game, and everybody else is shaking in fear. Georgia, of course, they got defense. They got, Mikel Williams over there, who could also be the first draft pick, the first number 1 draft pick, or at least a top 5 pick. They have Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson on the line. So Georgia's going to create pressure, which in turn creates turnovers. So this is where, like I said, Georgia's going to beat Alabama. This is where they're going to force Jalen Milroe into making some of those throws. He's going to have to try to check down and do these things that he's not good at, because that's what coaches like Kirby Smart do. Coaches like Bill Belichick, they take what you do
best away.
Yeah, so they're going to take that deep ball away, and you're going to have to prove that you can beat them. Now, with Texas, we're not skipping. We're still talking about Georgia, but with Texas, when they play Texas, Texas then already lost 2 running backs, before the season's even started. They're down to Jaden Blue. They went and grabbed a guy out the portal the other day. So, one, if you can't run the ball against a team like Georgia and you're one-dimensional, don't even show up. Don't even show up.
Because when Georgia gets the ball back, when you have to punt it, they're going to trot out an offensive line. Yep. I'm going to read this off of CBS.com from July 8, 2024. The Great Wall of Georgia gets bigger. Average size of UGA's incoming offensive lineman, 6'7", 340 pounds. It's
a lot of
5 people. So that means a couple of them are 6'8", 350, and maybe one is 6'6", 330.
Right.
That is 6'7", 340 offensive line.
And they going to lay on you.
19 to 22. So
yep. And
so we talk about their schedule. If you can't match that level of physicality from your defensive line, I think that, coupled with the fact I believe their quarterback is, like I say, seasons grizzled vet, been there for a while.
So I think
been in college for a while. So I think they'll be fine.
So I think looking at their schedule, Bama has an offensive line that can match up with Georgia's defensive line potentially. Tennessee has both sides of the ball, offensive line and defensive line, that could give Georgia, not necessarily give them trouble, but they can match up and you feel
make them work.
They'll make them work. And then Ole Miss has a defensive line because they went and got Walter Nolan, who was one of the best players, if not the best player, on that great Texas A&M recruiting class of 2021. He's that guy. He's going to be
won
playing
the hell out of that recruiting battle. That recruiting championship goes to Texas A&M.
Yeah, I'm sure they got a banner. Remember, Tennessee had the Champions of Life trophy a couple of years ago. So Georgia ain't going anywhere. Like I said, the schedule is tough to bear. But when I really think about it, who can I see beating Georgia? Because I look at Clemson, right? And I tell myself, yeah, Clemson's defense can make life tough for Georgia. But can Cade Klubnik do anything against Georgia? I don't think so. I look at, say, Alabama. I already talked about Jalen Milroe. I'm not going to beat it ad nauseum. I look at Tennessee. Tennessee, I think, has a decent shot to match up with Georgia. But the problem is it's in Athens. If it was at Tennessee, maybe I'd give them a fighting chance. Texas has a chance just because it's at home. But if Texas can't run the ball, then, lights out. And then, who else is left after that? You got to hope that Kentucky. So what I'm saying is that Georgia 12-0 is on the table, regardless of how tough this schedule is. But with the schedule, could they go 9-3 if Carson Beck has a bad game? Or 2 or 3, I guess.
So if you are thinking they go 9-3, that means, in my mind, Cade Klubnik has a great game. That doesn't seem likely. I don't think I don't think a great game out of him is great enough to beat Georgia. I mean, Jalen Milroe has a great game because it's home. They got to go to Tuscaloosa. Granted, it's not far geographically, but it is home.
Right.
Uh,
And I like these coaching matchups. Don't forget, Clemson's offensive coordinator was the offensive coordinator when Georgia put up that 65-7 in the national title game.
Old Texas. I mean, I think Quinn
They
Ewers is
could
going to
lose
be.
at Ole Miss. I think that's the game. I
just have recent memory of Ole Miss kind of just
they beat them. Georgia beat them last year. I think it was 52-17 or something along those lines.
Just like not having those moments multiple times a year, because we're going to get to Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is probably going to win a big game against somebody early in the season, and then this November 9th game against Georgia, I don't know if they're going to be up to task for that. Like right now, they're preseason ranked number 6. I can't imagine they're still going to be 6 that late in the season. I like them, but I just think like they drop a game somewhere.
I know, but we'll get there. But if you look at Ole Miss's schedule, it sets up. It does set up. You know what I'm saying? But we'll get there.
So 3 losses for Georgia, I don't see, because I don't think there's a team that outguns them on paper.
Well, like I told you when we first started,
I can't see them losing. I don't think there's a team on their schedule that can match them position group for position group.
Well, like I told you when we first started,
so them losing 3 times just seems unlikely to me.
Yeah, like I was saying when we were doing previews and when we did the Big Ten preview the other day, all things created equal, the national title game should be Ohio State against Georgia.
Correct.
You know, all things created equal. You know, but that's why they play the games on the field, right? So we'll see.
Yeah, but in college is different. Like we saw the game last year, Texas versus Rice, and it looked like it was going to be a game. Well, 2 things. Rice's sideline was being cooked the entire time, literally, like the sun was just leaning on it. And then
you did there.
Rice is being cooked. I'm such a wordsmith. No, and then Texas was chilling, and then Texas was doing defensive line swaps like an NBA team. They were swapping out 5 guys at a time. Yeah, they were doing these mass swaps the whole second half. So, what's the guy that's been to like 11 colleges in 7 years? The quarterback,
JT Daniels.
JT Daniels.
Who played at Georgia at one point.
Yeah, he was just getting hit with waves and waves of, somewhat fresh bodies. And I think that's the difference in college football. That's why the upsets are rare, because just eventually, if your coaching staff and your core players can stay level-headed, stay on the field, don't get ejected, anything like that. If you have your 6'7", 340-pound offensive line, and you say, you know what, this next drive, I don't want to see a pass. Right. I want to run the ball. I want 2 tight ends, my biggest running back, and my offensive line, and we're just going halfback dive all the way down the field, insert our dominance. You do that early in the second quarter, you can take a team out. And I think that's the difference with college talent. That's why it's always surprised me when teams have talent and they lose. But, like with Alabama, with Georgia, I don't think Kirby Smart lets that happen. I think all the winning is kind of just, I think it permeates to the building. I think you can see it in the facilities. You can see it in the equipment. You can see it in the fan turnout. It's just too much of a winning culture to lose 3 games this year when they essentially have probably the best team in the best conference.
Yeah, so what does Texas do for an encore? They made the college football playoff last year, lost to Washington. They went into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama last year.
That was the most important one of the year.
Yeah, like I mentioned, no Bama on their schedule this year. Without the top 2 running backs, or at least I should say their first running back and their third running back. They still have the second running back. Xavier Worthy's gone. A.D. Mitchell's gone. On defense, Tavondre Sweat, gone. Byron Murphy, gone. So like Mr. Logical said, they were swapping out these dudes like a platoon, but that's easy to do when you got those 2 dudes as well. You know what I mean? When you can leave one of them on the field with some of these other guys. So when I look at Texas, like I said, I look at their schedule, and they start out with Colorado State, so they'll be fine. Then they go to Ann Arbor, so that's going to be a big one. And like Mr.Logical said the other day, he's picking Texas to win. And my question is can Texas push them around? Can Texas hold up? Can Texas run the ball? Sort of the same thing I was asking about Georgia. Can Texas be tough enough to win that game? Because prior to last year, Sark was one of those coaches that, and I mean, this might be the start of his run. I know Nick Saban was the same way at LSU. Like, they would always lose to somebody. They would always end up with 3 losses somehow, even though they had all this talent. Texas, they get Oklahoma on October 12th. So after the Michigan game, they're on cruise control for their next 3 games. They get the Oklahoma game, but this is the problem, Mr. Logical.
I'm listening.
They get Oklahoma and Georgia back to back. Like, the good news is it's at neither one of their places because they play OU in Dallas every year. And they're getting Georgia in their place. So
and the crowd's 50-50. So there's no disadvantage with location. Yeah,
they do play Florida on November 9th, but that's at home as well. The week after that, they get Arkansas, which I love Coach Sam Pittman saying these Arkansas fans rather Texas lose than us win, which is funny because they haven't been in the same conference with Texas since 1992.
Listen, man,
that's madness. You know what I mean?
Be friends deep.
But then the last game of the season, they come down to College Station to play the Aggies, who they have not played. It's a disgusting act of negligence that they haven't played Texas A&M since 2009. But this is the first time since then. That crowd is going to be jacked at Kyle Field. The 12th man is going to be ready. So when I look at Texas, best case scenario, you lose to Georgia. But I can find
11-1 to 9-3.
I say possible 8-4.
I don't see 4 though.
I can see 4. Because like,
unless you're counting all their preseason ranked teams, you got Michigan, OU, Georgia, Texas A&M.
There you go. That's the 4. Right.
Those are your 4.
I'm not saying that that's going to happen.
But if you look at the rest of the schedule, I don't think there's really. I don't think any other teams will end up ranked at any point.
No, there's not much of a threat. They lost to Oklahoma last year on the last possession. Dylan Gabriel's in Oregon now, so Jackson Arnold is taking over. I don't see the Jackson Arnold love, but apparently
Venable isn't a great offensive coach. He was barely a good defensive coach.
OU's going to have a pretty good defense this year.
When TCU torched them a couple years ago, I was like, I thought he was a defensive guy.
Well, you got to remember, he came in there with Lincoln Riley's sorry-ass defensive players.
Yeah, but even with that, you could teach cover 2 and cover 3 and cover 4.
Yes, you could. But
people were wide open. They was covering nothing.
How about the Rebels, Ole Miss? Coming off their first, their biggest win total in school history, 11 wins. This is the highest that they've been ranked in a preseason poll since 1970. We talking JFK. Lane Kiffin, always the question, can he win the big game? He does a lot of talking. He does the swag thing.
Second swaggiest coach in college football.
But unlike Deion, saying so far, because, I don't want to be unfair. Deion's only been there a year. But Lane Kiffin has walked some walk. He did beat Penn State last year. There's no shame, I guess, in losing to Bama and Georgia. Those were the only losses last year. And he provokes people, before the Alabama game. He did the Taylor Swift, castles crumbling and all that. And, so this is where he gets himself in trouble. But they got Jackson Dart coming back, 3,364 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. They got
Utah let him get out of the state.
Hey, sometimes you don't have a choice.
He went to USC, but I'm like, I know we're getting off topic, but
I mean, a
still
name like Jackson Dart sounds like a Californian.
yeah. No, it's Jackson with an X. That's
I
all
know.
Utah.
I know.
JAXSON. That's Davis County, Salt Lake County all the way.
Weber County.
That's Weaver County all the way. But shout out to Jeff and Heather. Their son's name is Jackson, but it's no S. My little nephew. But yeah, so like I said, Utah was always like a quarterback away in those years in the Mountain West, and then when they went to the Pac-12, it's like you were a playmaking quarterback away. And I've seen multiple guys end up out of like not going to Utah, like end up out of state. So, but he's been there for a while. Like I said, Lane Kiffin, second swaggiest coach in the NCAA. He's been using that NIL money and opportunity since it started. Like he had the guys driving the Bentley around. He's sitting in the passenger seat, got them taking their photos with the visit with the Bentley. So as soon as
now they got a
NIL was
Bentley in the
legal,
backfield.
so
they got a Bentley in the backfield now. Quinshawn Junkins decided to go to Columbus, Ohio. So now Ulysses Bentley the fourth is going to take over at running back. He's been on the roster. He was the backup. Now the problem for Ole Miss is I don't know if they have a running back that can get the 4th and 1. That's what I think they're missing. So they went out, like I said, on defense, got Walter Nolan, who is one of the best defensive players in the country. So they had to get tough. They got smacked around by Georgia last year. They got smacked around by Bama. So they had to change something. So that's what they changed. Between their two receivers that they're bringing back, between the two receivers,
big backs, though.
But between the two receivers they're bringing back in their tight end, they accounted for 2,175 yards, 15 touchdowns. They brought in Antoine Wells from South Carolina, who in the past has been second team all SEC as a wide receiver. So fully loaded.
Hold on real quick. I'm going to run down some of these numbers. So you said you don't think they have a 4th and 1 guy at running back?
Yeah.
I think you can manufacture one. You got Rashad Amos at 6'1", 235. You got Ali Scott, 5'10", 220. You got another guy, 5'9", 200 pounds. That's more like a fullback.
Yeah, and these guys
they have 10. Yeah, they had 10 fullbacks, like 14, 15 wide receivers. That 83-man roster, those 83 scholarships really going to pay off because, it's
crazy. It goes up to
105.
It goes up to 105 next year. That's going to be real interesting.
But
also,
215-pound quarterback. So, yeah, they have bodies.
We'll see. And then, of course, like in addition to Walter Nolan, they brought in the sack leader from the Florida Gators. So there you go. You know what I mean? Trey Amos, I forgot that they picked him up. He was at Bama. So I forgot that he was on the roster. So that's a good call. But so Ole Miss is in prime position this year because when you look at their schedule, there is not much to actually look at. They're going 4-0 in their out-of-conference schedule right off top, because they're going to start out with Furman, the Paladins. They go Middle Tennessee State, Wake Forest on the road, and then their other out-of-conference game is Georgia Southern. So that's their first 4 weeks.
Yeah.
That's their first 4 weeks before they play Kentucky, which is at home. They do go to LSU. Hopefully we can get a replay of that 55-49 thriller from last season. Then they play Oklahoma the week after that. Watch out for the trap game at Arkansas on November 2nd. If Sam Pittman is still around, he might be fired by then. But then you got Georgia coming in November 9th. You get a bye before you go to the Swamp. So, so best case scenario, same thing, right? Best case scenario. Well, actually, for Ole Miss, I'll say best case scenario is 10-2.
The SEC, I don't know who the SEC so far, as we've done our previews, and as I can recall, I got Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas. All three of them could have 11 wins because Ole Miss doesn't play Texas
or Bama.
So it just feels like we looked at the Big Ten schedule, and I felt like this was a little. The Big Ten and the Big 12 schedule just looked a little bit tougher, even for the top teams.
Yeah, it looked like the top teams played each other.
Yeah, this one doesn't feel the same way, even though there are stud teams on here because the SEC is a top conference.
But
It just
the
doesn't
problem is
feel
that
like
these teams have
they
questions.
don't have they don't have these marquee matchups. I just kind of assumed that I get Texas and Georgia, I get Texas and Bama, I get Texas and I thought I was gonna like when they went to the SEC, I thought to
Well, that's
steal
the
their
thing that
phrase,
well, that's the thing that I
Bedlam. I
always
thought it was going to be
argue
like
with.
Bedlam, but it was like they're just basically replacing. They just fall into the same mold of
Well,
like,
that's the
oh,
thing that I used
get
to
the top
argue
teams
with
and easy
SEC fans
schedule.
about, because if you talk to SEC fans before about teams like Georgia, they would have you believe that they play Bama, LSU, Florida, Tennessee, Auburn all in the same season. You know what I'm saying?
They play them 2 times each. It's like
Yeah,
just these
and like
teams play each other.
they hadn't played Bama in the regular. They have not Georgia. I'm talking about. They haven't played Alabama in the regular season since 2015. You know what I mean? But if you leave it up to them, they're just walking through landmines all the time. So it is what it is. But yeah, Ole Miss, 10-2 best case scenario. They could drop to 8-4. So they could be one of the scheduled beneficiaries. We were talking about this with teams like NC State, where
Their
Ole
first
Miss
7 games, none of those teams are ranked in the preseason top
yeah,
25.
like they're like the NC State where we were talking about. NC State might not be a great team, but they have the schedule to get to the ACC championship game. That's Ole Miss. Ole Miss is better than NC State, but when you look at Ole Miss, this schedule sets up for them to get to the SEC title game. And oh, by the way, a SEC title game that they've never played in.
They're primed for. I mean, it's like looking at it. I think I know we looked at Bama. You said they're going to probably be 8-4, but they could easily be 10-2 because we got one of those losses to like one of these. Like I think you had them losing to potentially like Missouri and Auburn. So if they win that, they could be 10-2. So the top 4 teams in the SEC, I don't know what it is as far as a percentage, but it looks like their schedule
Right.
isn't that high in the strength of schedule category.
Right.
Unless they're just going to go off reputation and people are like, oh, they got to play the SEC schools. But I'm looking at you're going 7 weeks before you play a team that's preseason ranked in the top 25.
Right.
And you're in the SEC. Like you should have at least one.
Yeah. So then you got the LSU Tigers. Jaden Daniels is gone, the Heisman Trophy winner, 50 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, led the team in rushing by close to 400 yards.
Still hadn't learned how to slide.
Last year, LSU's defense gave up 416.6 yards per game, 28 points per game. That is not LSU. They brought in Blake Baker from Missouri to be the defensive coordinator. So they should be improved. Like going to your point about Brett Venables, they should be improved. Even though they got the same load of players, the better coach should get more out of them. Nussmeier is taking over at quarterback. He has seen some action to include the bowl game. But the thing that I don't trust about LSU mostly is the head coach, because when I think of Brian Kelly, I saw him at Notre Dame. I saw him lose to Tulsa. I saw him lose to USF. I saw him lose to Duke. I saw him with a top 10 ranked team play against the Miami Hurricanes and lose 41-8. I've seen these things. And then I've seen his defense last year. So, they start off with USC, a.k.a. Trojangelis, up in Sin City next Sunday night, standalone game. So prime time, everybody's watching you. Just like the last 2 years, they had the prime time, everybody's watching you, and they couldn't beat Florida State. So, and I know LSU fans.
I never thought that was a good hire. I remember when you were talking about it, I'm like, that's not a good hire.
Yeah, he doesn't fit in, but it just is what it is. Like, he's a good coach. He wins everywhere that he goes. The rest of their out-of-conference schedule is easy. They get Nicholls State. They get UCLA at home. They get South Alabama at home. And remember, I told you their head coach is the defensive coordinator for Alabama now. So they should win all 4 of those. Well, not counting the USC game, they should win the rest of those 3 games easily. They get Ole Miss at home. They get Bama at home. They get Oklahoma at home. But they go to A&M. They go to the Swamp. So now this is where I start to part a little bit, where you were saying, hey, all these teams could have 10 wins, all these teams,
I don't see it
I
here
think
though.
LSU's best case scenario is 9-3.
Yeah, I saw Nussmeier play a few games and scrap duty when Jalen went out in the Alabama game. I seen him play. He is like the quarterback version of Brian Kelly, where it's like, I think you're good enough, but I don't know if you convert 4th and 17 in that crunch time kind of moment. Some like Cam Newton when he was in college. Granted, Cam Newton was probably one of the greatest college quarterbacks ever. But you just kind of knew when he was down 20-0 at Alabama that they still had a shot.
Right.
Like you knew like there was something special about this guy. He still had a shot. I think that Alabama LSU game, before Dallas Turner puts his helmet into Jaden Daniels' chin, he was killing him. I think he had 200 yards passing and 200 yards rushing. They were scoring touchdowns on every drive until he got hurt, and then Alabama was able to pull away when they put Nussmeier in it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a drop off there, and I'm not sure if Brian Kelly is the coach that can. If you got to put Chad Henne in for Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid is still the coach that can get this guy to get the team success using this guy. I think Brian Kelly is one of those coaches that needs Jaden Daniels to be that catalyst,
right,
to get him over the hump.
Well,
and
see, right
that's why you said that 9-3. I'm thinking more like 8-4 because I could see them losing to Florida, Oklahoma, Bama, and Texas A&M.
Well, see, like LSU, this is crunch time. Because, like, you look through the history of college football, people like to talk about blue bloods and things like that. So, you got Georgia with Kirby on their run right now. You got Bama, who is always around. You got Texas.
Texas just came into your conference.
Always got talent.
They're probably going to have a better record than you this year, potentially.
You got Oklahoma, who's always around.
Always gets Texas.
And your claim to fame as LSU is every now and again you beat Alabama. And if you beat Alabama, you could have a good season, but mostly you're Alabama's bitch. Like, that's basically LSU in a nutshell. Like, if you beat Alabama, it's a great year. And if not, then you just try to fight for second place.
You would think there would be more stability in LSU considering how good, like, I think they have a quality program. I think they put top flight players in the NFL.
Yeah, they don't have a school in state that challenges them.
No one challenges them in state. I think they probably recruit the hell out of Louisiana. They recruit the hell out of Arkansas. They recruit the hell out of Texas. So why is it that you don't have a coach that has a 15-year run there where he's playing for national championships 4 or 5 times in that 15-year run? It just seems like that's the kind of collegiate environment where that should occur.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
The same conversation we had about Miami. It's just like, you should be able to thrive in this environment because literally your school is football pedigree 101.
LSU is still an infant. Like, LSU is still a baby. They just showed up in 2000. Like, they've had good history back in the 40s and 50s, but
it's almost 2030. And they've had talent since 2000. That's damn near 30 years.
No, it is. But
that's what I'm saying. Like, you should be locked in. It's not like a school like Virginia Tech is always a good school, but it's not like a melting pot of recruits. So they've always had good coaching, a good solid foundation, a good structure, middle nowhere Virginia, just kind of locked in. So you're gonna get some up and down. If you get like that, if you get a Michael Vick, then you can go on a two-year run where you're the most dominant team. Then you get followed with the Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Vick, those kind of players. You occasionally you get those. LSU gets those kind of
Brian Randall, huh?
Brian Randall, yeah. Shout out.
Him, huh?
Yes, that's like, I think we're kind of related through some kind of way. I don't know. Virginia's small, but the LSU just. The position group by position group is just first round talent every single year. They can go 0-12 and still will have a couple of first round guys
Right.
at every group. So for them not to be locked in on these kind of Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, Caleb DeBoer kind of runs, it I don't know, it just kind of blows my mind. But like you said, it comes with every couple of years they get the primetime game and they get beat. Last year they lost to
Yeah, I'm
Florida
waiting to
State.
see if Kyron Lacey is going to be the next great LSU receiver. Can LSU run the ball? Logan Diggs is gone. So, there's still questions about LSU. And I think a lot of people are giving them benefit of the doubt because their name is LSU. Over in Knoxville, this is now the Nico era. Nico Yamaileva, is taking over at quarterback. Looked
Good
great
job.
against Iowa in the bowl game, and that's Iowa that we're talking about, Iowa's defense. So, no slouch, but now that you look at this, Tennessee, I said this the other day, or I mentioned this the other day. Tennessee is the team. If somebody says, hey, tell me a team that's not in the top 5 or the top 10 that could go to the playoff and win the national title, I will say potentially Tennessee. But I will also say we might be a year early because this is going to be Nico's first year starting. There's going to be some bumps along the way.
Got to be some growing pains.
Yep. Jalen Wright is out here taking the relay from Tyreek Hill, trying to beat Noah Lyles and his teammate. You got Brew McCoy is back. Squirrel White is back. Dylan Sampson is back in the backfield to take over.
Great nickname, Squirrel.
Yeah.
Squirrel.
You got the guy who, here it comes. You ready? You got the guy who will be the number 1 draft pick in the NFL draft next season. James Pierce coming off the edge. He's back. 14 and a half tackles for loss, 10 sacks. As a team last year, what got me pumped up about Tennessee this year is that they led the SEC in tackles for loss as a team, and they were second in sacks to Texas A&M. So Tennessee, is talented, but it's all going to depend on how quickly Nico can put it together. Now, week 2, they get it out the mud. They go to Charlotte, and they're playing the Wolfpack. The winner of that game is going to be set up in prime to make a run. But then 2 weeks later, they get Oklahoma's home opener as a SEC team. Memorial Stadium is going to be rocking for that game. And this is going to be Nico's first true road game going into Norman.
Did Oklahoma get an SEC size offensive line? Or are they still kind of running that Big 12 nimble?
Oklahoma's got some big boys up there now. Are they Georgia? Probably not. You know what I mean? But they're not Iowa State. You know what I mean? Or somebody like that. They can hold their own. And they got talent, of course. But that's going to be a tough road game for your first road game. And then you go back to back on the road at Arkansas. But like I said, Arkansas is probably going to be looking for a new head coach. The best Tennessee teams of my lifetime have lost to the Gators. So that Florida game's not a gimme. And then you get Alabama the week after the Florida game. And then you get Kentucky the week after that. So that middle sandwich right there, that Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, could be where Tennessee's season dies if they lose one of those NC State or Oklahoma games.
Yeah, October is going to be a tough run.
Yes, and you still got to go to Georgia after that.
Well, I think the Georgia game is – I think teams are probably looking at that game like, hey, we can't focus on that one. Realistic, let's focus on these other 11 and then go up there and just execute against Georgia and just kind of hope.
And that's the problem with being a team like Tennessee is that you're already in the hole. You're already trying to explore your margin for error because you got that game on the schedule and it's at Georgia. If it was at home, maybe give you a puncher's chance, but it's on the road and I don't think you're winning in that.
Inside the hedges and anthers, it's going to be tough.
Right.
That depends. I mean, Nico's been the real deal for a while. He's been number 1 rated quarterback out of California. We see how Bryce Young, how well he fared playing quarterback in the SEC with that California year-round football training because of weather. So like he was in 11 on 11s all the time. You see him on TV. He was one of the earlier guys I remember getting like a big NIL deal. I think it was somewhere around like $8 million. So I think he might have had a lot of time over the last couple of years just to focus on playing quarterback, paying quarterback coaches, or having it sponsored and things of that nature. So I think he's probably going to have an edge, and it just depends on how well, how well they start. Because like I said, you can roll a hot hand. And that's why I believe in Texas. If it's a coin flip, I'm taking the more experienced quarterback or the quarterback that has like the better skill set that applies it better. I think Jalen Milroe, we talk about Jalen Milroe's passing. I think what he does with his arm and his legs is incredible. We're not doubting him as an athlete, as an athletic quarterback, but there's going to be games where the other team is going to they are literally going to let you, like I said with Luka, just let Luka shoot, but don't let him pass it anybody else. Let Jalen hold the ball back there for 6 seconds.
Right.
Keep you contained. Don't let him step up and run through. Don't let him get outside. Keep you contained. Let him slide back and forth. We got 7 people in coverage behind it. Make him make the throw. And if he makes a few, then okay, you got to switch it up. But if he doesn't make a few, now they're punting, and now you can get back out there and do your thing. But I think having the advantage at quarterback is good, especially in the SEC, where generally we remember a lot of running backs coming out of the SEC, especially in Alabama. Alabama kind of started adjusting, like, guys are going to 4 wide receivers that all run 4-4s. I got to go get 4-3 guys. Mm-hmm. And he started getting a track team, and then he started getting big arm guys from Florida, like so we got Mac Jones, Jalen from Texas, and California with Bryce, and then all the way out to Hawaii to get Tua. He was like, let me get a guy, because I'm not sure how much they throw in Southern high schools. I don't know if it's like, because Devian Clowney was a running back in high school at 6'5", 260. So I don't know how much they throw the ball down south, but like especially out west, they throw it a lot. So I think if you can get up there and slice these defenses up, Tennessee could be, like I said, that team outside the top 10 that can get in and make something happen.
All right, so we're going to get through the rest of these teams, just for time purposes. So we got Missouri, so this is my question. You've been talking about it, and I'm going to say it again. All these teams, they can win 10 games out here. Looking at Missouri's schedule, they could win 10 games out here. But the question about Missouri is, can they go from the hunter to the hunted? Because now they're being viewed a certain way. They're ranked high. You beat Ohio State in your bowl game. You played Georgia tough, like Mr. Logical said. And when I look at your schedule, you're probably going undefeated out of conference.
Why are all these teams playing Alabama and Oklahoma back-to-back? I think this is like the 3rd time I've seen it.
You know what I mean? And Missouri goes to A&M. So like, but could Boston College on September 14th be a sneaky team? They got Bill O'Brien in there now. Is he going to handcuff Thomas Castellanos, or is he going to let him do his thing? But it's at Missouri, so you don't go into the zoo and win that easily. But, you got at A&M and you got at Bama. You got Auburn. So that, that stretch you're talking, they got Auburn at Bama and then Oklahoma.
And then at South Carolina, who
I'm not worried about South Carolina.
I
mean, unless we're playing NCAA 25, that's where Nick Harbor's a star. But but in real life, I'm not concerned about South Carolina. So Missouri, they could be looking at 9-3. Or if they could sneak that win in Bama, like I said, don't slip up against Auburn. Maybe Missouri's in the SEC title game. Like the margins are that close. They got Brady Cook back. They got Luther Burden back.
Are points part of the tiebreaker? Like overall points? Okay.
No, so usually
if they were, it's going to be a lot of games that are 63-14.
Well, normally it's head-to-head. Yeah, normally it'll go off head-to-head. Your record against the top teams in the conference, so on and so forth.
Okay.
But Luther Burden is back, one of the best wide receivers in college football. Theo Weiss is back. Brady Cook's back. Cody Schrader's in the NFL. So now you got to find somebody to run the ball. They lost their defensive coordinator to LSU, like I said. But I do like Coach Drinkowitz, Eli Drinkowitz. So we'll see what happens. Auburn, year 2 of Hugh Freeze. Last year, they lost to Georgia by 7. They lost to Bama on the 4th and 31. But they also lost to New Mexico State by 3 touchdowns at home. They do have 8 home games this year, even though they go to Georgia and Bama this year. So there you go. You should have won that last year.
I think they might have the toughest schedule at first glance that I'm looking at.
They might.
Of all of SEC, because they got Oklahoma, Georgia, Missouri, Texas
Alabama,
and Bama.
Yeah. Peyton Thorne leaves a lot to desire. Like everything that I said about Jalen Milroe throwing the ball, apply that to Peyton Thorne, but go in there with the mindset of if this is NCAA and Jalen Milroe's an 85, Peyton Thorne should probably be a 73. So just keep that in mind. You know how bad he is? 162.2 yards passing per game last year. But as a team, Auburn rushed for 189 yards a game last year. They got talented receivers. Problem is they're all freshmen. They're bringing DJ Durkin in to run the defense. He was the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M under Jimbo. I think 8-4 is the play here. But that still takes some wiggle room because, like Mr.Logical said, they got a schedule on them.
At first glance, without the numbers, their early schedule, their first 3 games are probably the easiest of anyone in the SEC. But then you throw Arkansas in because you said their coach is on a hot seat just because after years of just kind of being successful. But starting September 28th through November 30th, they get a break at ULM.
Yeah.
Everything else is you need to bring your A game every other game.
It's tough, man. It's tough out here.
It's gonna be a tough stretch. Yeah, their stretch is way tougher than Ole Miss, and even tougher than Alabama.
Just wait till we get the Florida schedule. Keep your thought of what you're thinking right now, but just wait till we get to Florida. All right. So Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold's coming in. A lot of people thought that he was going to surmount Dylan Gabriel last year. I went to see him at the Alamo Bowl. It was his first start, so I don't want to bang on him too hard, so to speak, but I just didn't see it. But a lot of people have high hopes for him and think that he's going to be the next great quarterback in college football. Like I said, they opened up SEC play for the first time against Tennessee at home. Their out of conference should be pretty easy. They go to Auburn the week after that, which is the week before Texas. So there's your 3-game stretch: Tennessee, at Auburn, and then Texas. They close at Missouri, Alabama, and then they go to LSU. So we're looking at possibly 6-6 for Oklahoma. I'll be nice and say 7-5. So the road schedule from hell, they got 11 of their top 13 tacklers back, returning 6 starters on defense. So they're not a bad team. I'm just looking at the schedule, and they got Danny Stutzman back and Billy Bowman, so that September 21st game, I keep harping on it, the game against Tennessee, which first-year quarterback can win the duel? That game is going to go a long way to determining how this season plays out. Then you got Texas A&M down here in College Station, as I mentioned. They open up next week. I'm calling it. I picked it already. Texas A&M is going to beat Notre Dame next week to start the season off the right way. They got McNeese State after that. They go to the Swamp. That's going to be tough. Then their schedule lightens up until October 5th. They play Missouri, but it's at home. They go to Mississippi State, LSU at home, at South Carolina, New Mexico State, and then they close at Auburn and against Texas. Connor Wigman is back. He got hurt last year because one of the linemen missed a block. He got hit and broke a bone in his foot. Mike Elko is coming in, head coach. You remember him as the head coach of Duke. So A&M's going to continue to play defense. The question is going to be, what can they get out of their offense? And Mr. Logical, did you hear who Texas A&M's running back probably will be?
No.
E.J. Smith. son of Emmett.
Emmett Smith.
Yep. So keep your eye
Yes,
on that.
yeah, I saw that earlier today. Yep.
Yeah, keep your eye on that. So I like A&M. I think they're going to be better than people think, but it's going to come down to the LSU game. It's going to come down to the Auburn game. So I'm going to say for now, best case scenario, 8-4, with a potential of 9-3. So, not so bad. But now, Mr. Logical, this is what I've been trying to get you to.
Yeah,
Let's look at that Florida Gator schedule.
Somebody's got to be bad,
Well, they play these play these out of conference games against teams like McNeese State and Nicholls State. You know what I'm saying? But let's look at this Gator schedule because the Gators ain't going to be 9-3. So you want to talk about the bad teams? This is the stretch where we might get into some of those bad teams. So you're looking at the Gator schedule, right? They got Miami at home to start out next week.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? They get their easy game. They play A&M. They go to Mississippi State, which should be a win, but it is Starkville. They get UCF at home, and UCF's going to want to make a statement against the big state school. Yep. Go to Knoxville, get Kentucky back-to-back. Speaking of Kentucky, there was a stretch where Florida had won 31 straight against Kentucky. Now, Kentucky has won 4 of the last 6 and the last 3. Then they get Georgia, the cocktail party down in Jacksonville. Go to Texas the week after that. Yeah, this is where it gets good. They get Georgia, go to Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and close at Florida State.
They have 10 out of 12 tough games.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. Somebody
legit, not even like legit without even an Oklahoma.
Yeah, no Oklahoma, no Bama.
No Oklahoma, no Bama.
Missouri.
And they still even if you want to say UCF and you can't really say Kentucky because Kentucky got, you said 4 of the last 6.
Yeah, and 3 straight. Yeah.
So even if worst case scenario, you say, you know what, UCF, they're the little brother. This is Florida playing against Central Florida. They'll take care of business. That's still 9. That's still 75% of your schedule are realistic losses. And not even because you are underperforming. It's just that you have
and you got a coach on the hot seat.
You got a coach in the hot seat.
11-14 record last year to close out the season. In their last 5 games, they gave up 38 points a game. They lost to FSU with the 3rd-string quarterback after they took a cheap shot on the 2nd-string quarterback because Jordan Travis was already hurt. Trevor Etienne, we brought up earlier, went to Georgia. Graham Mertz is back. The quarterback is back. 72.9 completion percentage, 20 touchdowns, 3 picks. But Ricky Pearsall is gone. You still got Eugene Wilson. Your sack leader went to Ole Miss. So, I don't know, Gators. I'm sorry. Kentucky. Like I said, they got.
Hold on.
Oh, you're not done with the Gators yet?
Yeah, I need a prediction from you,
Mr. Status. For their record?
Yeah,
5-7.
Yeah, Yeah,
5-7, and that's if. So I got them beating Mississippi State.
Okay. Samford.
Hold on, UCF.
So we go through it. Okay, week 1 Miami. Who you got?
I got Miami. If Miami loses that game, Lord, you better pray for Mario Cristobal.
So you got them beating Samford, Texas A&M. What do you got?
I got that as a win.
So that's 2-1.
Yep.
Mississippi State.
Win.
3-1. UCF.
Win.
4-1. Tennessee.
Loss.
4-2. Kentucky.
Win.
5-2.
Lose out.
And then they lose out?
Yep.
Yeah, he's gonna get fired.
Yeah.
At least he'll make it through the whole season though.
I know. I mean, he better be begging. He better be up in that room talking about, look at the schedule. I didn't create the schedule.
I would already be on it. Now we need to edit this.
I'm like, yo, if I get 6-6, you know what I'm saying? You might want to extend me.
You think St. Nick would take this schedule? You think Nick Saban just change the team from Florida to Alabama? You think Alabama will play this schedule?
No.
No way in hell. Who's lobbying for Florida? This is worse. This is just as bad as Pittsburgh. This is like the college football because we gone through a lot of these schedules. I haven't seen one where a team that's 5-2 could potentially lose out
That's why I told you when
and
you
go
brought up
5-7.
when you brought up Auburn, I said, hold on a second. Hold on
Yeah,
a second.
Auburn and Florida need to call their congressmen and be like, listen, next year we only want to play SEC schools, but we want to be eligible for the championship.
Yeah. All right. So then you got the Kentucky Wildcats. You know, so I think that Kentucky is a good team. The problem is they're breaking in yet another quarterback for the second straight year, a quarterback that they got from the transfer portal. But last time they got an experienced quarterback. This time they got a guy who hasn't played yet, Brock Vandergriff, who was on the bench at Georgia. Do I want to assume that he's good because he was on the bench at Georgia?
They got a boy from Rutgers too.
Yep. And then their running back, Ray Davis, he's in the NFL now. They do have receivers, though. They do have that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They got Barry and Brown, and then they got Dane Key. So both of them are good receivers, but it's a little weird because as good as they are, if you actually watch them, they don't necessarily get a lot of yards. The playbook was very dumbed down, and I don't know if that was because of the quarterback. So we'll have to
Has
see.
to be.
Yeah, so we'll see.
The speed of the Kentucky wide receivers, if they're not going 3-4 wide and taking deep shots for every quarter, not the whole game, not just out there airing it out Eric Coryell style, but just that the speed that they have at the wide receiver position, them not going down the field, I think that's a byproduct of quarterback capability.
They did bring in they did bring in Chip Trainum from Ohio State, at running back. Last year they were second in the SEC against the run. So the Florida game and the Auburn game, and like I said, Auburn is like the toss-up team for this year. Like every team that's on that brink of 8 wins, maybe like being a surprise, the Auburn game is going to determine the fortune of your season because Kentucky should go 4-0 out of conference. They got Southern Miss, Ohio, Louisville, and Murray State. So, they should be able to go 4-0 there. And that's back to your point earlier when you say these SEC teams are going to get 7 or 8 wins. That's why, because they're going to go 4-0 or 3-1 out of conference to begin with.
Yeah, their out of conference schedule is short of Georgia playing Clemson and even Florida playing Miami. Florida should have just reminded the people making the schedule, like, yo, we're playing Miami
preseason. Like y'all do know that we play Florida State every year, right?
Every year. So
this year it's at Florida State.
We got 2 top ACC schools, and we got to play the rest of SEC. Can we spread out?
Yeah, but Kentucky's got some traps on here, some big ones. They go to Ole Miss, they go to the Swamp, they go to Tennessee, they go to Texas. So
I think they're playing with house money though, because I'm not sure what the expectation is for Kentucky.
I'm looking at
a 7-5. A 7-5 year is a win because you get the bowl game. It might be like the Minor Car Carrier Bowl, but it'll be a bowl game that gives you an opportunity to go 8-5, some exposure, some primetime games, whatever the case may be. And maybe you're the darling team. Like right now, like you said, it's potentially Tennessee. Definitely not going to be Florida. I'm still just aghast at how tough that schedule is. Not even the teams they play. It's the fact that they play them their last 5 games after injuries and all the wear and tear from your previous 7 games, which is inevitable. Even if you are markedly better than the team you're playing, people are going to get banged up, elbows, shoulders, knees, toes, all of that stuff. Yeah. And then you're like, all right, cool. Now we're going to give you this NCAA 25 gauntlet to get through the end of your season. So it's just, I don't know. Yep. I mean, it's tough. You're in that conference. You're in a tough conference. They could have probably gone to the ACC years ago and maybe had a little bit of an easier path. You stayed in the tougher conference.
You got to get that money, man. It's all about that money.
Yeah.
You know, you got South Carolina with Lenore Sellers taking over at quarterback for Spence
Spencer
Spence
Rattler.
Rattler. There you go, Spencer Rattler. Shane Beamer is the head coach. I got hung up there. You know, I think that he's going to end up nice guy, fired coach. You know, it might not be this year, but South Carolina's got a road to hoe with the new SEC, you know, as it is with Texas and OU coming in. You know, like what happens to you because, you know, like they went to the schedule where you play certain teams every year, you get some teams every other year, so on and so forth. But unfortunately for you, you're going to get Georgia every year. You know what I mean? And for this year, you know, like you missed Georgia this year, luckily, but you know, you go to Kentucky in week 2, you know, you get LSU the week after that, you get Ole Miss 2 weeks after that, and then follow that up at Bama, at Oklahoma, and then Texas A&M. You still got Missouri after that, and you still got to go to Death Valley to play Clemson. You know, so like I said, if this was NCAA, Nick Harbor just throw the ball up.
I like the NFL when you have a 4th place season, you come out the following year, schedule. You play a 4th place schedule.
Right.
These guys are playing Georgia's schedule.
Well, you know why? Because these teams need wins. I need to get teams into the playoffs. So you know what I mean? They're going to play you because you're going to be our test dummy.
Yeah, that's a mean stretch. Like I said, so and if they can, I mean, I won't say steal, but if you can get Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, maybe Oklahoma's not who we think they're going to be, or at this preseason 16 might just be Fugazi.
Right.
Maybe you can squeeze in a couple of wins there. Vandy, we know they're hit or miss, and they haven't been much since Jay Cutler was there. Ever since that dude said, "Alabama, you're next. We're gonna show you how we play real SEC football." If you've seen that clip,
got shut out.
Yeah, and then Jalen Hurts, like technically, he is right. We are playing them next. The next game on the schedule.
Well, you ready for your stat?
Oh, let's hear it.
South Carolina last year, 85 rushing yards per game, which ranked. Now, you remember we always talk about how many teams are in the FBS.
132.
126. So that's not the stat, though. The stat is there were 2 Power 5 teams that were worse than them. And they are Washington State and Colorado. So, you know, South Carolina also brought in Robbie Ashford. You know, he was the backup at Auburn, running quarterback. You know, could they have packages for him, you know, where he plays a little slash action? That's what I would do. Beamer ball, right? And then, you know, this, I don't know, like South Carolina just got a long road to hoe. Arkansas, you know, will Sam Pittman be there by midseason? Mr.Logical, are you up to date on who Arkansas's offensive coordinator is?
You know, that's not my realm.
Well, you'll love this. You know, saying I asked you that question for a reason.
Probably Bobby Petrino.
It is Bobby Petrino.
Knew it. I just you said when you said love this, I was like, yeah, he's being sarcastic.
Yeah, and you know, he came over. He was at Texas A&M last year under Jimbo. A lot of people,
video coordinator.
A lot of people were wondering, was he going to sneak Jimbo's job? He didn't get the job, but now people are wondering, is he going to sneak Sam Pittman's job and get that old thing back? You know, so
it's a vulture.
Yeah,
he's a vulture.
So KJ Jefferson went to UCF. Rocket Sanders went to South Carolina. So now you got Taylor Green at quarterback coming in from Boise State. So here's another stat for you. Since 2021. Arkansas is 2-9 in one-score games. 2-9.
Wait, so they're 2-9 in one since 2021. So that is 3 full seasons.
Yes.
21, 22, 23. So that means every other game is a win or a blowout.
Yes.
So 11 games in 3 years where they're like competitive at the end and still lose.
Yep.
So that means they're just getting tossed in the rest
Yeah,
of them.
and they've lost 11 out of 12 to Texas A&M. And the crazy part about that is they play at a neutral site. I mean, it's Jerry World, but Jerry's an Arkansas guy. So as you look at this, their season, right? Arkansas Pine Bluff. You know what I'm saying? So that's a win. Then you go to Stillwater. Where Oklahoma should be going, but no Bedlam this year. Screw you, Oklahoma. They go to Stillwater to play the Cowboys. They come home for UAB. You know who UAB's head coach is?
They set up these out of conference games, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
A couple years in advance.
Yeah, it's usually like 5 years in advance or so.
I'm not doing that. Like, because you don't need a tough win if you're in the SEC. You just need to win in the SEC.
Right.
Because you can beat 4 Power 5 schools and lose 8 games in SEC. And it's like, what was the point of playing these tough ass games in September when we could have just played Arkansas Pine Bluff, Prairie View, Arkansas State, and then just
which
roll
they've
into
never played
SEC.
in football since I can't even remember, but it's been 30 years since they played Arkansas State. Shouldn't
just
even be
roll right into your SEC schedule. Like, I don't know who's calling these shots, but they need to hire me.
But guess who's coaching
for them?
Guess who's coaching UAB?
Is it Trent Dilfer?
It is Trent Dilfer. You know what I mean? So then they play. So then they go
slap a kid on the sideline last year.
I know he yelled at a coach or something.
Oh yeah, he was cussing the coach out.
Yeah.
Then
they go to after the UAB game, they go to Auburn. So trip to Jordan Hare. They get see. Look at this, man. Look at this. At Auburn, you get the A&M game at Jerry World, Tennessee, LSU. Now, granted, both of those are at home. The Tennessee and LSU game. Then you go to Starkville, where Mississippi State shouldn't be good, but it's the Cowbells.
Well, you got to play that one. It's just I would like not to play all the ranked.
Not to play them on the road at least, but then you get Ole Miss and Texas back to back, and then you close at Missouri with Louisiana Tech.
And Tech in the middle, and Louisiana Tech is a pretty solid football program. Yeah, they're a solid football program.
So I think I'm looking at 4-8.
That seems reasonable.
I think I'm looking at 4-8. They win every out of conference game but Oklahoma State, and they get the Mississippi State game. That's your Arkansas Razorbacks. Mississippi State, with new head coach Jeff Lebby coming in from being the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. He's of that Art Briles tree. And he even got in trouble due to Art Briles last year because we all know that Art Briles is a piece of shit,
Sure.
But, Art Briles just happens to be his father-in-law. And last year, he had Art Briles running onto the field at Oklahoma, and the Oklahoma administration did not like that very much. You know what I mean? But the good news for Mississippi State is since 2019, Jeff Lebby, as an offensive coordinator, his offenses have finished top 25 in 20-yard or more plays.
What about total offense?
So explosive. They're explosive.
Explosive plays.
You know what I mean? They got Blake Shapen coming in at quarterback from Baylor. So we'll see how it goes. The problem is that Mississippi State came up under, rest in peace, Mike Leach. And then the last year or so, they had Zach Arnett, who was more of your old school, run it down their throat, old Wisconsin style. So you're turning over your roster, and
3 yards in a cloud of dust teams.
Right, and you have a lot of players that probably don't fit the system right now. So you're going to have to get in the transfer portal next year. They do have 7 of their top 8 tacklers back. So that's a good thing at least. But looking at the schedule, right? Same thing. Out of conference schedule. Eastern Kentucky at Arizona State. Toledo in UMass. 3-1 has to be the record, if not 4-0. Maybe you lose at Arizona State just because it's a road game, just because it's a tough place to play, even though Arizona State isn't expected to be very good. But then
Right.
you get into your SEC schedule, as Mr. Logical will tell you. You get Florida on September 21st, go to Texas, go to Georgia. Why are they going to Texas and Georgia back to back?
Who made these schedules? We looked at the top schools because I stopped and wrote my note about LSU, Ole Miss, Georgia, Texas, potentially 10 or 11 wins. So who set it up to where the top teams play the easiest schedule in the toughest conference?
Somebody that wanted to
They
get
had
somebody that wanted to get 4 teams into the playoffs.
This is our first conversation about it. And if I'm looking at it as it's printed out here, whoever was putting this together had to know this isn't fair for our brand to have 3 schools potentially 4-8 or 5-7.
But look at this though; it's not over. Like so, they go Florida at Texas bye week at Georgia, A&M. Then they get their Arkansas, UMass, and then they close at Tennessee and at home against Missouri. So
No, I got
another
Missouri, Murray, and then they close it with Ole Miss at Ole Miss.
yeah. So they could literally win all of their out of conference games and
And look
lose
like the
all
worst
of
team
their
in the
SEC
country. Yeah.
games. They could lose all of their SEC games
They can
to
win their
include
first
that Arkansas game.
they can win their first 4 games 120-30 and look like a dumpster fire for 8 games.
They could.
4 of their games they can look like
Unless Jeff
champions.
Lebby gets that offense humming, and maybe they can make a bowl game, but not this year. I don't see it. And then, of course, we got to close it out with the Commodores, the real Commodores, not like y'all call my Commanders the Commodores. We're talking about Vanderbilt, who went 2-10 last year. Coach Clark Lee, who I actually think is a good coach. He just coaches at Vanderbilt, but then again, James Franklin won 9 games at Vanderbilt.
A long time ago player.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Mr. Logical, I brought this up the other day. You know who Vanderbilt's quarterback is this year?
Who's the guy? It wasn't the guy from Kansas State. Was it a guy from Kansas?
Nope. It was the guy from Utah, Nate Johnson.
The guy that will hold the ball and then run like Justin Fields.
Yeah, and then they were like, Bryson Barnes, come on in. But so they got Nate Johnson at quarterback. The head coach, like I said, Clark Lee, he's now going to take over defensive play calling. So, you know how I feel about that. I said the same thing about Dave Aranda the other day. When you do that, that's just desperate times calling for desperate measures.
You let these coaches coach, you oversee, you're the CEO or you're the president of the company. You delegate everybody else and then you report up to the CEO.
Yeah, and then you got Tim Beck coming in as offensive coordinator from New Mexico State. We talked about them earlier with their 31-10 win at Auburn last year. So he's coming in. They got Jerry Kill, who was the head coach of that New Mexico State team, as a consultant. They brought in Diego, I think it's Paiva, Diego Paiva. He's a quarterback as well, who was the quarterback for that New Mexico State team. So one of 2 things is happening here. Either you love continuity or you're so bad that you got to pull from New Mexico State.
I mean, listen, there's talent everywhere. If you got an eye for it and you're at these positions, especially when you're in SEC school, because the area you're trying to recruit in is mostly dominated by the other top schools. And once again, they have their schedule's a little lighter.
But they still get it. But Vandy also has the problem is this is 2024. They have no pass rush and they have no corners. So
they're going to give up a lot of points.
Yep. And they start off week 1 with Virginia Tech. Saying they get Alcorn State for a win. Georgia State should be a win.
But they have surprise teams before.
Yep. Then they go to Missouri, get Bama at home, go to Kentucky. They get Ball State, which should be a win.
Primetime game on ESPN Plus.
Yep. Then then they close at LSU and at home with Tennessee. So I think that Vanderbilt is going to get the Dion stimulus of, they're going to go from 2 wins to 3. They improved.
They got 4.
Maybe 4. Maybe they could, but who do they get? Like if they
got 3.
Yeah, if they win a SAC game, I don't know who it's against. Unless they sneak up on Kentucky like they did 2 years ago.
Or maybe Auburn overlooks them.
Yeah, maybe Auburn.
It's tough.
It's tough. Maybe South Carolina.
I like the quarterback. I like the speed, Nate Jones. I like the speed, but it just felt a lot of fast quarterbacks are just sometimes they need to pull the trigger as fast as they run.
Right.
And I think he just didn't do that often enough at Utah.
Yeah, so maybe South Carolina. We'll see. Because there comes a point where teams lose, or you get out of bowl contention. Maybe the players don't care anymore. Maybe the coach is playing some new players to get an early jump on next year. So maybe you catch somebody.
Guys opt out because they know they're going to go to the transfer portal,
right.
Stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, like I said, these November games are going to be tough, but it's kind of set up for these top schools, and I don't know if they wanted to prevent that from happening, where guys are just kind of checked out.
Right.
And that's a fumble. He had that ball. And they kind of gave these top schools these easy schedules so they can ensure that we get the names we want. Because I wrote 4 out of 12
playoff teams.
Yeah, I wrote 4 out of 12 ? For the SEC. So we can shoe in Georgia, 10-2 Bama. They're in at 12, right?
Yeah, they're in, but I got them.
Somebody's gonna have 13 games played because I got Ole Miss potentially 11-1 based off how their schedule just kind of lays out. So that gives me 11-1, 12-0 Georgia in a championship game. So either 11-2 Ole Miss or 12-1 each school, obviously. But even a 13-0 and 11-2 Ole Miss, I think, still gets in the top 12.
Yeah.
I think a 10-2 Bama still sneaks in. And then, hell, we got to figure out whatever the tiebreaker is because I got Texas also at 11-1, potentially.
Yeah, so I'm going with Georgia and Ole Miss in my SEC title game. Like I said, I got Bama 8-4. Texas, I just think the injuries are going to set in at some point. They're not going to be able to run the ball as well as they want. As I look at Georgia, I don't see anybody that can beat them, in the SEC, but maybe they lose one, And
then you get a 10-2 Missouri. Does that
they could be a threat? What about Tennessee? If Nico puts it together, Tennessee could sneak up into the SEC championship game. So, but those are, I think the SEC gets 4 because, as I said before, I think the Big 12 only gets 1. So I think the Big 10 and SEC will get 4. What?
That's a touch. I'm looking at that's a touchdown. That elbow touchdown challenging.
Well, actually, let me back up. SEC will get 4.
Yeah.
The Big 10 gets 3.
Correct.
The ACC gets 2.
Yeah,
you got your G5
game gets in.
Yeah, you got your G5.
So that's
7, maybe the Big 10 gets 4.
10.
Maybe the Big 10 gets 4 because I only see one Big 12 team getting in.
Maybe you get 2 and the 2 from the championship game are
maybe. That's the Big 12 hope is that.
Is there a cap?
No.
If there's not a cap.
No, there's not a cap. Just whoever the committee wants to put in, like the 4 highest conference champions get the buys. G5 champion is guaranteed a spot. They could theoretically finish higher than 12, but I think in most years they're probably going to be 12, especially due to who the champion might be. And the G5 is in trouble, right? Because, if they get good, the big school just going to come grab your players.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see this. Hey, Boise State beat Oklahoma. They came back next year and beat Oregon. You're not going to see that because as soon as they get a good player, gone.
Come
You
on.
know, as soon as your coach wins, like G5 make the playoff, your coach is out of here.
I think they're gonna put some harder kind of stipulations in. You would think, unless if the top schools are gonna benefit.
Well,
so I think they will limit
until 2026. In 2026, they can renegotiate and change the playoff if necessary.
So 2024 season, 25 season, 26 season. After it's over, then they renegotiate for
and then that's when they can add new. They could go to 14 or whatever. They can say, "Hey, G5, you're done. Like you're not even getting a spot." They could go, "Hey, automatic slots where, the SEC and Big Ten get X amount of teams automatically.
Automatics 3.
So it's all on the table. You know what I mean? Which is just going to phase the NCAA further and further away. And then by 2027, and this is just me, by 2024,
four big conferences:
by
North, West, North, East, Southwest.
Now, I was going to say by 2027, Florida State and Clemson should be able to mosey their way out because I don't know if ESPN is going to. Well, we'll see. We'll see. ESPN has the ability to not renew the contract with the ACC. We'll see. But if Florida State and Clemson can find a way out of there, that could be the way. So there's a lot that's going to happen in the next 3 to 4 years. And then you got the Big Ten contract running out in 2031. So you got a whole decade of fuckery to get through, to get to the future of college football. But on that note, folks, we will be back Monday, with our college football playoff picks.
Correct.
Our NFL playoff picks.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big playoff bonanza. So, join us. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things, do all the good things. He is the even kill, Mr. Logical. Do not bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
I am your unorthodox statistician going left so much that you thought I was southpaw. We'll be back Monday. Have a good weekend. Enjoy your football.
Yeah, preseason football is not that bad.
That wasn't what I was talking about. I'm talking about the Knowles, damn it.
We'll see how Mike feels on Monday about the Knowles.
I'ma feel good. You know what I'm saying? But we love y'all. Thanks for the support. Share it. Peace.